Laundering voter fraud. Let's start with the photo ID. It is required to purchase alcohol, travel, cash a check, buy cigarettes and drugs, the legal ones, open a bank account, report to jury duty as citizenship requires, and to rent just about anything. We can do this all day. 90% of the voting population is going to have a driver's license whether they own or rent a car. Most of the remainder is going to receive a paycheck. However, not all of these will be photo compliant. Day workers, temporary organizations might get lazy, but the bank won't cash it. Even welfare recipients require a photo ID. So why are the politicians going crazy over rights violations? A photo ID is needed to function at the most basic levels in this country. Why is it disenfranchising the poor if used for voting? Let's look at your rights. The First Amendment gives you the freedom of the press, but you still cannot libel or slander. You are granted the freedom of speech, but not anywhere, anyway, or anytime you want. Disturbing the peace or other laws apply. You receive freedom of religion, but not freedom from religion. You get freedom of assembly, but stay off my yard, and don't occupy a public park, destroying it and the surrounding businesses. You also get the freedom to petition the government, but no guarantee of getting what you want or even a reply. The Fourth Amendment protects you from illegal search and seizure. The Fifth Amendment guards against self-incrimination. The courts have ruled the stop and identify process does not violate either amendment. So you have no right to hide. The only conclusion is this argument on the photo ID is a grand distraction. It can be argued to be the laundering conduit of logical thought. What is the politician trying to hide? In this map, the photo ID is a villain designed to hide a crime. To discover what is really going on, we have to examine the crime scene. Each district has a polling place with valid ID laws handed down from the state government, with some county modifications. Nowhere can you just point to a name without any proof of ID and vote as that person. States with strict ID laws require a picture ID, like a driver's license. Limited ID laws allow secondary forms of ID because they stem from photo ID requirements, like a paycheck requires a photo ID to receive or cash. However, some organizations will be lax on ID requirements. So all districts have some form of ID law, but any ID used can be faked. This simple fact blows up the entire photo ID argument as useless banter. Photo ID, no photo ID, does not change the vulnerability of the voting process, the most sacred right of citizenship. Maybe a new form of ID would be helpful. DNA isolates the fraud to family members, but would be slow and usher in another round of politicians pretending to care about our rights. Fingerprinting is tried and true, but that could make people feel like a criminal and violated, unlike the prostate exam at the airport. A retina exam is creepy and will cause all kinds of lawsuits blamed on temporary blindness hours, even days later. Gotta love those who use the law as a weapon. Face recognition is getting very good, but that means a fast data connection and pushes the debate into network security. Being inked, like in Iraq and Afghanistan, seems doable, but it only works once. Someone will invent a universal de-inker and ruin it for everybody. Let's take another look at the crime scene. The polling place has voting booths, poll workers, and voters. The registry folders only contain your name and address and do not record the method of identification, which might be useful for tracking fraud. If there is a voting conflict, the voter can still vote through a provisional ballot, which is identity checked later while still preserving ballot secrecy. One of the outsiders is the observer. Prior to the polls opening, they are allowed to watch the setup procedures. They are not allowed to loiter during polling hours, and anyone can be an observer. After polls close, they can watch the teardown, focusing on the ballot transfer from the box to the bags. But neither of these time periods are when the fraud takes place. The other outsider is the poll watcher. They are allowed to loiter during polling hours in a designated area. They cannot talk to voters or the poll workers, with one exception. The poll watcher is the spy. They work for the politician, campaign organization, or political party. They can do something no citizen can. They get access to the registry. Protecting your voting participation should be at the same level as protecting your vote. The politicians seem to agree because they prevent any video recording within the polling place, aside from a few very limited exceptions. So why are they giving their employee access to this information? As long as there are no voters in line, the poll watcher can ask the poll worker to flip through the registry and look up specific names. They cannot touch the book, but that's probably for their own protection, fingerprints. The only piece of useful information deals with non-voters. Yes, it could be used to check on union workers and make sure they voted. However, it can also be used to make sure the habitual non-voter has not voted. This information is transmitted to the campaign office. That organization gets its money from donors with a vested interest in the politician. These sometimes fictitious community organizing groups have a mission statement that justifies the donated money. This cause benefits the village that volunteers its slaves to work for the ghost organization. The poll watcher is the laundering conduit. They sneak in under the protection of the politician and confirm the non-voting information is accurate. The information is delivered to the community organizer, who passes the message on to the identity thieves. Meeting the appropriate minimum ID requirements, they gain access to the voting booth. By some wild chance, if the voter voted during this communication period, the identity thief will get stopped at the registry books. However, the poll workers cannot detain the individual or leave the polling area. They inform the clerks, who contact the polling deputy, and by this time the identity thief is long gone. Once in a while this happens and the media reports it as a footnote of some other story. The workers report back to the community organizer and get bused to their next location to repeat the voting fraud. Now I understand why video recording is not allowed in the polling place. The politician is protecting the voter fraud facilitators from being identified. The politician keeps everyone immersed in the photo ID argument, even though a photo ID does not change the voting booth vulnerability. The poll watcher is the conduit to launder the restricted registry information through the community organizer working for village interests to steal an election. How many elections are lost by a few thousand votes? This process is simple and easily covers the spread. Hopefully the voters will wake up and realize they have the power to stop this. Start by not re-electing the politician. We don't need them to pass term limits. We decide. They have all failed us, so get rid of them. And we must demand from the next batch prosecutions. Otherwise, nothing changes in this playground. You might consider granting an exception to the new Tea Party members. The village represents slavery and must be burned down to protect the keystone of our republic, fair elections. There is a solution. The government already has multiple databases filled with photo IDs. Simply put a 1-inch photo icon next to the voter name and address in the registry. Done. Nothing is perfect, but this takes a big leap forward in protecting our rights.